Giant mechs are supposed to be some of the dumbest ideas in science fiction, yet Pacific Rim managed to deal with everything that doesn't make any sense in the best possible way, and also forgot how to do it 5 years later. So what even are the problems with giant mechs, and how did Pacific Rim solve them all? To understand that, we first have to look at Pacific Rim, the good one. There is only one. Pacific Rim opens with a Jaeger walking through water, Gypsy Danger, miles off the Alaska coast in the dark. The camera sits low, looking up. The sound team gives it, well, I mean, just listen to this. Just amazing sound design. Your brain does the math before the film tells you anything. This thing is the size and weight of a building. Now look at almost every other giant robot movie ever made. Every adult on planet Earth has watched at least one Transformers fight and felt the size collapse. You'd think a giant robot punching another giant robot would feel huge. It doesn't. It feels like watching two angry bar brawlers arguing over who emptied the bag. The cars they used to be have more mass than the things they turn into. You can see Optimus Prime sprint, leap, spin midair, land on his feet, and the entire time your brain is going, this thing weighs like 8 tons, right? How is it just doing that, like, with agility? The movie just keeps going, and we accept that for now. Look at the AT-AT walker from Star Wars, who gave us another clue at dealing with giant mechs. A giant armored quadruped, slow and top-heavy, with knee joints exposed at the height a snowspeeder can reach. The Empire spent untold resources building these things, and the rebels took them down by tying ropes around their legs. Seriously, tying ropes around their legs. You might not like my take here, but whoever signed off on those blueprints lost the next galactic procurement audit. But, you know, still, the AT-AT is a tank on stilts in a universe with planet-destroying weapons. Going for ground war options usually doesn't make sense here. There is zero emotional investment in an AT-AT. That's what most mech designs across the genre actually share. People keep building these things with the engineering of an IKEA bed frame and the physics of a balloon. And then there's Pacific Rim Uprising, the quote-unquote upgraded Jaeger program. The things in that film, well, you know, they move like they forgot they were supposed to weigh anything at all. For most of these sci-fi films, the designers wanted giant mechs to look cool. They didn't have to make any technical sense. But when the mech doesn't feel right, nothing around it feels right either. A weightless robot makes for a weightless fight, which makes for a weightless city, which makes for a weightless world. But there is good news, everyone! Watch the first big city fight in Pacific Rim. Gypsy Danger drags a cargo ship through downtown Hong Kong like it's a baseball bat. The ship grinds along the road, pavement tearing underneath. Cars get crushed as it goes. When she lifts the ship to swing it, there's a long windup because 2,000 tons doesn't change direction without convincing it. When the ship hits the kaiju, the impact has follow-through. The arms keep moving for a second after the body has decided to stop, because that's what bodies that heavy actually do. Something most other mech films leave out. But then you go back. Then you watch Gypsy Danger walk again, and the first thing you notice is that nothing about her looks futuristic. She looks like something built in a shipyard by people who, you know, weld for a living. You might get a faint idea about what Pacific Rim did right, and still, that's not the only thing they did differently, as Pacific Rim started with 3 specific rules nobody else did before them. The first rule we just covered on the surface level. Everything had to look industrial. Rivets and scale plates and exposed cables and soot baked into every panel. Del Toro called the aesthetic Gothic tech, which sounds, I don't know, pretentious, until you actually look at Cherno Alpha. Cherno Alpha is a walking nuclear reactor. The Russian Jaeger is a Soviet boiler with arms and a head shaped like a furnace. You don't need to be told it's heavy, you can see it from across the room. The names match the silhouette. Gypsy Danger, Cherno Alpha, Striker Eureka, Crimson Typhoon. These sound like they were stenciled on the side of a destroyer in the 1960s. Military equipment vibes, not whatever Transformers were trying to be that year. And there were rules behind those names too. Components couldn't repeat across Jaegers. No two named the same thing. The sequel broke that, for example. Gypsy Avenger reused Gypsy, Obsidian Fury reused Fury. Del Toro went further. He told the production team to stop watching giant monster movies during prep. He didn't want them copying Godzilla or reaching for what already existed. The reference he gave them was Heavy Metal magazine, to really make the film its own thing. Then, every Jaeger in the film looks like a different species. Striker Eureka is a smug athlete, all shoulders, narrow waist, designed by someone who clearly went to an Australian boxing gym. Cherno Alpha is a brutalist landlord, completely indifferent to your concept of negotiation. Crimson Typhoon has 3 arms because it's piloted by 3 triplets, and the silhouette tells you that the moment it walks on screen. Gypsy Danger looks like a war veteran. Weight on the back foot, scarring on the chest plate, eyes that have seen a kaiju do worse than this one. The individualist designs do more than you'd think though. Take any frame from a Pacific Rim fight where a Jaeger is drenched in water, half obscured by smoke, lit from one side, you still know which Jaeger it is. Try that with Transformers and you're gonna have a bad time. Most mech movies build one mech aesthetic and then recolor it. Red one, blue one, big one, small one. They share a chassis and a hand-drawn line. Pacific Rim treats every Jaeger like it came from a completely different design tradition. Like the Russians built one robot, the Chinese built a different one, and they happen to fight on the same team. But the engineering language doesn't match, just like in the real world. That's rule 1, which is still the easy one. Rule 2 is movement. A robot is just a sculpture until it moves, and the second the movement is wrong, every other design choice collapses, which is where the animation team came in. They scaled the physics of every Jaeger up by a lot. Mass, inertia, momentum, all bumped up to what these things would actually weigh. In practice, the big masses move smoothly. The torso, the limbs, the head, they swing through space the way a 100-ton object swings, with momentum that has to settle. But layered underneath that, in the joints, there's mechanical motion. Pistons firing, plates shifting under the smooth swing. The Jaeger looks like an object with the engineering visible. Even the Jaegers themselves struggle. Every motion looks like effort. The hydraulics fight the weight. The body fights its own inertia. And then the sound of the movement. Oh, that sweet sound. Every kaiju punch sounds like a building meeting another building. Footsteps that crack pavement. Hydraulics venting steam. The kinds of sounds you hear in a film about ships. Mute your next Pacific Rim fight. Sound off. Watch a kaiju get punched in silence. The fight is still there. The movement is still there, but the weight is gone. The whole illusion collapses. I mean, half the believability of these things lives in the audio. That's rule 2. Rule 3 is the simplest, the camera. The camera in Pacific Rim almost never sits at Jaeger eye level. It's down at human scale, looking up at something the size of a building, and it's always placed somewhere a human could actually put a camera. On the ground, on a rooftop, on a passing helicopter, never floating freely through the air, the way modern blockbusters love to do, where the camera becomes a flying eye that goes anywhere. A camera that can go anywhere makes everything feel small. A camera locked to where humans live keeps everything in scale. So that's 3 rules. Industrial design, movement and sound truly meaning something, camera sticking to scale. Every choice points in the same direction. All of it is stacked so the audience believes a 1,000-ton thing is walking. And the film still hasn't explained why anyone's inside, because that's what truly separates Pacific Rim from just having cool giant robots to become something else. Their answer was the drift. 2 pilots, neural handshake. The official explanation is that running a Jaeger takes more cognitive load than one brain can handle, so the system requires 2 minds locked into each other, sharing the weight of operating the body. The film backs it up with practical work. The cockpits are real physical sets. Del Toro called them torture machines, which sounds like director hyperbole until you found out the actors who played the Cherno Alpha pilots got drenched in hundreds of gallons of real water during their scenes apparently, leading to real fatigue on their faces. So when you see 2 people locked inside a Jaeger fighting to hold their drift together, you're watching 2 actors who actually got soaked and shaken and exhausted for the take, which is why the emotional weight imports cleanly into the CGI fights happening outside. And underneath that, the deeper reason is storytelling. If you let one pilot run a Jaeger remotely from a control room 300 miles away, you've made a war movie. War movies are fine, but they're not Pacific Rim. The film needed humans inside the thing looking out through the eye slits, locked into a relationship that breaks if either of them does. So the engineers came up with the drift, which is a piece of science fiction that nobody on planet Earth believes, and that's fine, because it was never trying to be science. It's nonsense science doing real emotional work. The drift turns the mech from a vehicle into a relationship. You can't pilot one of these things if you don't trust your co-pilot enough to share your worst memories with them. Every fight in Pacific Rim is also a brotherhood stress test. What the kaiju fight is actually about is whether the two people inside the Jaeger can still hold their drift together. Once you accept the drift is doing emotional work, you accept a lot of other things the film never quite explains. Mechs in Pacific Rim shouldn't exist at all. You could nuke the breach. I mean, they did in the past and in the comics, I think. You could build a wall. I mean, they try. It doesn't work. The kaiju walk through it like a plane tearing through a building, but they try. Unless that wall was an inside job too. You could probably solve the entire problem with enough submarines and a really determined air force. The film knows. The film quietly keeps waving its hands and saying, yeah, but look at the giant robot. And honestly, fine, I'm not above admitting it. I will sit through worse logic for a worse reason. Also, the math is broken. Jaeger shouldn't be able to walk 7 miles off the Alaskan coast. That'd be way too deep. I think. I didn't verify it by going there myself, so maybe you could correct me in the comments. The film knows the math is broken. We all just nod and watch the giant robot. Every part of the design has been telling you the same thing the whole time. These things are heavy. These things are slow. Two minds share one machine through a piece of nonsense science, and they're the only thing big enough to fight what's coming through the floor of the Pacific. All of it is storytelling. You're climbing inside a building-sized monster to fight another building-sized monster because the film spent 2 hours teaching you it's the only thing big enough to do the job. The first film earned all of it. It's a real shame Pacific Rim never got a sequel to, ruin its legacy. So, anyway, Pacific Rim Uprising came out in 2018. It had the same Jaeger program, but with a different director, different writers, and above all, a different design philosophy. That produced a different result. So, must be a completely different franchise, right? Jaegers in Uprising look sleek, like sports cars. They have visible kneecaps and tapered waists and silhouettes that wouldn't look out of place on a Saturday morning cartoon. Gypsy Avenger is the spiritual successor to Gypsy Danger, and the difference between them is the difference between a battleship and an electric scooter. Saber Athena is built for, and I quote, hyper-acrobatic combat, which is a phrase that should have ended the meeting where it was first proposed. And the Jaegers move fast, like really fast. They sprint, they throw flying kicks, they do that whole anime stance and pause thing in the middle of combat where the air goes still for a second so you can see the silhouette. Yeah, watch the opening fight of Uprising next to the opening fight of the first one. It falls flat, completely different result. The first film took 2 tons of metal and made it walk through the Pacific in the dark. The second film took the same 2,000 tons and turned it into Power Rangers. Remember the slow thing? That is why the slow thing mattered. The first film made the Jaegers heavy and slow because heavy and slow is what hundreds of tons of metal does. The second film made the Jaegers fast because, I don't even know why. The moment the Jaegers stopped moving like things that weigh 1,000 tons, every other rule collapses. The industrial design doesn't matter anymore. The shipyard aesthetic doesn't matter anymore. The cameras, they float at robot height. The sound mix loses its bass. Come on, the bass! You can tell which Pacific Rim someone is talking about by how they describe a Jaeger walking. If they describe a city block on the move, they mean the first one. If they're describing a robot doing parkour, they mean the second one. Or maybe Transformers, I don't know. But what I personally think is the best part is how Pacific Rim understood giant mechs and then also applied it to the kaijus. Every Jaeger has its own silhouette. So does every kaiju. You can tell which kaiju it's fighting from a glimpse of its back, just like you can tell Jaeger silhouettes apart. The film designed both kinds of creatures the same way. Each one had a distinct species, distinguishable at a glance. Both designs are pulled from the real world. The kaiju are built from real animals, sharks, gorillas, bats. The Jaegers are built from real industrial things. Destroyers, spoilers, both are remixes of things that already exist. scaled up to where they do not belong anymore. Both take damage, like bodies. Plates come off, hydraulic fuel sprays the same way kaiju blood sprays. When Gypsy loses an arm, she fights with one arm. When a kaiju takes a hit, it staggers. Both feel injury. Pacific Rim turned something that shouldn't make sense into an emotional storytelling device we love. But there remains something else that doesn't make sense at all either: blowing up planets. Want to know why? Click here to find out.